This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time. Content presented in the following podcast is for information purposes only. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host and guest and may not represent the views and opinions of the Whole Care Network. Always consult with your physician for any medical advice, and always consult with your attorney for any legal advice. And thank you for listening to the Whole Care Network.
Welcome to From Guilt to Good, Self-Care Solutions for Busy Caregivers, the podcast rewriting the narrative of self-care. If you're a caregiver feeling stretched thin, torn between responsibilities, and longing for self-care, you're in the right place. I'm Jeanette Yates, a fellow caregiver and someone who spent years doing all the self-care things and never feeling any better. After years of research, self-exploration, and trial and error, I finally found a way to create a sustainable self-care practice that makes me feel good, not guilty. In From Guilt to Good, we'll explore how you can do that too. Together, we'll hear expert insights, actionable steps, and heartfelt stories to guide you through rediscovering your worth, reclaiming your health, and getting back the life you've been too busy or exhausted to enjoy. Today, we are welcoming Jamie Carbaugh. She is a virtual personal trainer and group fitness instructor and founder of FitRaggamuffin. This non-diet movement channel teaches her clients joyful movement for reasons beyond the scale. And she is also a military spouse and a mom of a very cool kiddo. Jamie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. I love talking about this.
Well, I'm so excited to have you. For those of you who follow me on Instagram, I've shared Jamie's stuff all the time. She is so encouraging, helpful, and practical. And Jamie, I'm just so excited to invite you to give my listeners, our listeners, a little bit of encouragement and support. You know, one of the things I really like about your channel is that you do have ways to engage people in joyful movement. That's not punishing, that's not guilt-ridden. And since we're all about going from guilt to good here, I thought you would be a perfect fit for the podcast. Is there anything else you want to tell me from your bio? I tried to make it short. Is there anything else you want to put in there?
I was a former physical therapist assistant. So that's something that has played a lot into my story. And obviously you speak of caregiving. So I worked at a skilled nursing facility before or alongside when I started the business. So that gives me kind of an angle of end of life stage. So I saw a lot of, we'll probably have a lot to talk about with caregiving in that sense as well.
Yeah, I did want to go ahead and ask you, one of the things I ask all of my guests here is, what is your experience with caregiving or caregivers, or do you have any? And it sounds like you do, a little bit of experience in engaging in that side of the world.
Yeah, I mean, when I worked in a skilled nursing facility, so that was 2013, 14-ish to 2019, I really had very little experience with working with 65 plus. So all my grandparents besides one had passed before I was born. And I just saw a whole other side to caregiving, you know, whether it was through the staff or through the children, the adult children, or through the spouses coming into the facility as well. So a spouse would come in with a broken hip. We would rehabilitate the spouse. And some things that I recall were, I mean, this kind of, I'll get emotional multiple times probably throughout this podcast, but, one spouse said, we're like, okay, you're strong enough. You're free to go, back home. And they're like, I don't want to go back home, and it was kind of, they opened up to me about my whole life as caregiving. This has actually been a vacation for me, so
Yep.
being that hit me as, someone I hadn't given birth yet, it was something like, wow, you are in the hospital recovering from a fall and a hip surgery, and this has been a vacation for you. I mean, that, if that doesn't hit you in a place that is, that just changes your outlook on everything too, especially in regards to how I practice as a trainer. I mean, we were getting these people strong enough so not only that they could return home, but so they could return home and lift their spouse onto the toilet from the wheelchair. So no, I have a very big reason. No, I don't take before and after photos. I don't take measurements. It's not about that. It's for functionality, to go in as far as functionality of these people. They had to do that. That was their job, and just how much it took for them to, be able to do that emotionally, physically, mentally. Yeah. It was, I mean, it really opened my mind to that whole other side of caregiving.
Well, and I think that speaks a little also to the reason we do any type of self-care, in this particular case, fitness. I remember when I was teaching fitness, and now I bring this into the self-caregiver community, but we talk about, like, what is your reason for self-care? Like, if you don't have if your self-care is not aligned with your purpose, then it's not going to be sustainable. And so different times of your life, you have different things that you're being called to do. And so, when you have young children, you're being called to that, like taking care of them and doing, so you have to be able to do those things. And I remember always what I try to remind myself of, and anybody that I work with, is, what are you being asked to do with your body and mind right now? Is it caring for a loved one? And then what does that entail? Do you need to be able to pick them up? Do you need to be able to roll them? Then you can ask, okay, well, I need strength and core work for to balance, like I need to be able to, versus high intensity cardio, right? So it depends, what you're looking for in your fitness routine depends on what your body actually needs to be doing at this time. And of course, there's space for passions, like maybe you love to run or whatever. But first, let's make sure you can do what you're called to do. And so I really love that aspect of what you just shared. It's like, because some people you're rehabilitating, every caregiver that's listening right now that has spent some time in a short-term rehab facility, I can promise you. And, sometimes they're literally just like, well, the goal is to get this person to be able to sit up in a chair. Other times it's they need to be able to walk or, do all these things. So I really like that your approach even then was, what do these people need to be able to do that'll make them be able to go back to the life that they left, right? To go back. And to your point, yes, sometimes having to think about that. I think when you shared that about being in the hospital as a break, it's like, you're burned out when you're like, you get the flu and you're like, oh, guess I can't go out guess I can't do caregiving for a few days, I guess I'll just stay in bed and watch Netflix or whatever. And you think like, yes, this is great. Yeah. That's a burnout situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it wasn't, that was an experience with a caregiver, but even with people being in the facility, it was, getting their core, increasing their core so they can roll over in order to have a bedpan put under them, so that they could use the restroom, or it was getting them up and walking or out of bed so they wouldn't. And these are people for living long-term in the facility, so that, sometimes they would have 2 nurses on staff helping them to the bathroom, but we were trying to get them stronger so that only 1 nurse would help them. So that, right. And just a functional independence so that they could feel a little bit, more independent. And then there was people who we would help walk with an assisted device, a 4-wheeled walker, or, even a wheelchair, having the endurance to go to the dining facility so they could have lunch with other people rather than in their room alone. So it really goes to show you that endurance and strength and all of the things that, we can work on with fitness leads to improving mental health, improving community. I mean, that person was eating alone in their room versus, oh my gosh, I'm working towards this so I can have community. I can be with people, which is such an improvement for mental health.
And we're getting ready to dive a little bit more into the work that you do now with FitRaggamuffin, but I do want to say one more thing. I think, when I know in my personal experience and the caregivers that are in the self-caregiver community, which if you're listening and want to join, check out the show notes. You can join for free. But one of the things that we talk about in there is like, we don't have time to take care of ourselves because we're taking care of someone else. But what we fail to realize is if we're not taking care of ourselves now, when we have the ability to, have a little bit more choice in what we do with exercise and food and hobbies and whatnot, we increase our chance of not having to go through that type of physical therapy later in life. If we create that core strength, if we create that endurance, that stamina now, it carries throughout our lives. And yes, it'll diminish as we age, but having that base is so important now. And I think sometimes we don't consider like, what kind of caregiving situation is our caregiver going to be in, when we get down the road. And so that's one of the things that inspires a lot of us. Not only like, one, can I do what I need to do for my loved one, but two, am I taking care of myself so that I can avoid some of these pitfalls that I'm seeing with my loved one?
Yeah.
All right. I know it's a big whole topic. We could stay right there all day, but the reason I wanted you on here today is I remember when I first saw your Instagram handle, FitRaggamuffin, and I was like, instant follow. Don't even know what she's talking about. The word ragamuffin takes me back to my childhood. I'm pretty sure my grandmother called me that from time to time. So I want to know, where did FitRaggamuffin come from, and talk a little bit about your journey into the fitness world and creating FitRaggamuffin.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that you were called that when you were younger, because that's that is a little bit of part of it, like a funny part. It comes in from a lot of angles, ragamuffin, but one of them is, I don't own a hairbrush. I've never owned, I don't really brush my hair, I use my fingers. So like, it was always made fun of. Like my mom would always say like, did you look in the mirror today? And I'm like, nah, it's fine. So I was always just kind of I just didn't care that much. But so ragamuffin is definitely true to my soul of, kind of embracing this, this mess part, this gray part, this, what do I want to call it? Like this pushback on perfection, because, so much of our life is, I'll do this when, or I'll start that if, or I'm only worthy when, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, well, yeah, especially in caregiving, like I didn't speak about the caregiving part about, being a mother and stuff, but you're like, you think today is going to go a certain way, and nope, kids teach you very quickly that anything that you had on your agenda is not,
right.
Is not, so living in the mess and also embracing the gray, because fitness has so many connotations with the extremes of, you're either on track or you're off track. You're either good or you're bad. You're either extremely sweaty and rocking it in beast mode, or you're sitting on the couch, not doing anything, blah, blah, blah. So it really, and obviously from guilt to good, kind of has that piece of like, okay, we're living in the extremes. How can we really, when there's 2 points to an extreme, and there's like about 1,000 points in the middle, how can we really embrace those thousands of points in the middle? How can we embrace the mess, embrace the gray? So that, ragamuffin comes from this place of, I shop at thrift stores. That's what I wear when on my channel. So I've never been a makeup person. Like, it's just acknowledge who we are and not wait for a win, but just really embrace this in between of it all. Because when it's either go big or go home and you don't feel like going big, you're going to go home. Yeah. So I'm here to teach you, or I hope to teach you all of the ways that we can adjust and meet ourselves in the middle, wherever we're at that day, because we're at different places every day, especially being a caregiver. Like, today I'm feeling under the weather, so you can probably hear it, and today I'm not at my best, but like, okay, how can I meet myself where I'm at today? So that's the question that I like to ask myself, and be compassionate with myself wherever that is. So yeah, Ragamuffin, embrace the mess, embrace the in-betweens for sure.
I'm in it. I love it. And I love that you have this, like, there is this spectrum. It's not all or nothing. It's not this, there's a variety of different things on this continuum of fitness or self-care. And, I am a strong believer in, that self-care, if it doesn't make you feel good, physically, emotionally, whatever, then it's not self-care. It's not, and so I think where one person can do something and can feel like self-care, someone else might do that same thing and think that's not, I hate that. Well, that's not self-care for that second person, but it is for the first. So it's okay,
Yeah.
And so we have to have that attitude. And then another thing I really like about what you said is if you can go big or go home, then you're just going to go home. I think a lot of caregivers feel that way too. They find a fitness routine. They're like, oh, I'm going to do this, this 30-day challenge, or this, all right, there's this meal plan I'm going to follow or something. And then life happens. You're in the hospital with your loved one, or they need extra attention and you can't do the meal prep, or you can't do the, whatever the fitness thing is on the plan for the day. And so you're like, well, I can't do it. So, I'm not going to do anything. And then you feel resentful, you feel, more stressed out, all this kind of stuff. And it just is, another chink in the guilt armor that's like, we're just, we're not doing good enough with ourselves. That's just another way we can feel guilty.
Yeah.
And so I love that. Yes, you can have plan A. You can have like, this is what I want to be doing. I want to be doing this plan. But if I can't do that, I want to know ways to move my body or fuel it or nourish it, or get some comic relief or whatever, whatever that is self-care for you. That there's other ways other than plan A. Plan A is great. I'm a planner. Please give me a challenge. Please give me a list. Please give me something that's organized, step-by-step process. But I also need to have that grace to know that even if I'm not going to do that, there are other things I can do. And it's also okay to not do something if that's what your body is calling for a day. So yes. I really love that you said that. Now I want to dive more into your, because one of the first things it says on your website is this idea of a non-diet movement channel. You talk about being weight inclusive, this whole non-judgmental approach that you bring to fitness and focusing on things beyond the scale. That is that is a real mind twist for a lot of people. And so I would love for you to talk a little bit more about why that is something that you advocate for and teach your clients, and why you think it's helpful in the world.
Oh gosh, that's yeah.
Why do you think this? I'm trying to create a movement here, Jamie. We're going to change the world.
Yes, I love it. Let's change the world. The benefits of exercise are endless. Like we could talk about the whole rest of the podcast for all of the benefits of exercise, but I truly believe that everyone deserves the benefits that exercise brings and that movement brings. And so sometimes it can feel like this exclusive club, you can only show up if you have the best clothes and you get the most expensive gym membership and you look a certain way and you do a certain thing. No. Like, show up exactly how you are, and let's break down all of the barriers that have been put upon people that are very unfair. And everyone deserves to have greater energy, more patience, increased strength, increased flexibility. So that's why I say come one, come all. I want everyone to experience these benefits, but also realize that there's so many barriers that have been put into place, like you were saying in the beginning, punishment, like if this piece of self-care feels like a punishment. So I'm not here to push people to say, well, if exercise feels punishing, you still have to do it, right? Like, No, right. I'm here to talk to you about why that is, because there are so many reasons why exercise feels punishing. And this is on an individual basis. I have the on-demand fitness channel, and I also work with clients one-to-one, but, hearing people's stories, well, no wonder it feels like a punishment. Your gym teacher yelled at you when you were in second grade, or you were made fun of because of the way that you look when you attempted a certain sport, or, people always come up to you with weight loss advice when you're at the gym. No wonder you hate going.
Right.
I mean, that makes complete sense to me. So right. If we talk about that portion first, because a lot of the times people think it's their fault. Like, it's my fault that I don't like exercising. I'm looking online and everyone else enjoys it and they're having fun and, all this stuff. But then we can pull back the layers on why it has become a punishment for you, why you dread it. And then you start to realize, oh, that makes sense. Maybe I'll have a little bit more compassion for myself when I don't want to do it, instead of beating myself up into, why don't you like this thing, you lazy, blah, 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 quote unquote, right. Like insert mean names here, So I know I went into a little bit of a tangent there, but
no, yeah, I told you we're creating a movement. You got to go with it.
Yes.
Well, first of all, caregivers listening right now, I hope you heard that one of the benefits of exercise was patience. So get on it. Like, that's a bit that's all we need to know. Thanks. Yes. If it helps us with our patience, we need more of that. So, but I really, really think it's so important for caregivers, especially. We have so many, like I've mentioned, so much guilt compounded on us, whether it's our own narrative that we're telling ourselves, or like you mentioned, we're bringing in the narrative of people that have spoken to us in our lives. I can tell you, if I go to a fitness class and somebody starts yelling at me, I have to leave. Like, I can't stand it. I'm like, just tell me the steps to do. I can listen, and then I will do them. You don't have to yell about it. Just talk.
Yeah.
So that's why I've always tended to yoga classes and Pilates, because I don't want yelling.
Yeah. And I think that's unfortunate, that's what's associated with strength training, or with, things that get the heart rate up, is like this intense aggressiveness of It doesn't have to be that way.
Right. And just while I have a fitness expert on here, we can dispel the myth that sweat is fat crying, right?
Oh gosh. Yeah. So that's what that quote, that is so, I mean, there are some that I break down and I say, like, oh, instead of, no excuses, let's talk about being compassionate with ourselves. Instead of, no pain, no gain, let's talk about, pain is an indicator of something going on, and let's get inquisitive about it. But some of them, I just can't even, when you really think about it, I just don't even have the time for sweat is fat. Like, oh, that's preposterous. I just can't,
right. Which is interesting because we all intellectually probably know that, but still when we're sweating, we're like, oh, this is better workout because I'm sweating more. It's like, you're also
and when you think about it from a physiological standpoint, sweat is actually to cool the body down, so when we are outside, it is the body's homeostasis mechanism to cool the body down. Sweat is a way to cool the body down. I've reframed.
It just says, it's not.
It doesn't make you feel guilty. Oh no, a quote that doesn't make you feel guilty. What are we going to do in fitness?
My goodness. Well, this is the kind of funny and enlightening content you get if you follow FitRaggamuffin on Instagram. She is always, she's not trolling the horrible quotes, but she does give you more encouraging ways to think about your fitness, which I really love. As we move on, I want to know, is there anything else that you want to talk about? Another thing that your channel does really well, I think, and you do really well, is not every single thing on your, that you have out there is about fitness. You talk about boundaries, mental health, these other pieces. Why is that such an important part for you to incorporate into what you share with others?
This is so fun. I love this question. So the tagline from FitRaggamuffin is movement for more. And that is, there's a lot of reasons for that. I will get to that question. But one of the things that I encourage people to note is just understanding inside of your head when you say, I got to exercise versus, I got to move my body. How does that land differently with you? Just using those two different words of exercise versus movement. Because speaking of a caregiver, I'm a mom. She's 7 years old. My daughter's 7 years old right now. I mean, she moves. It is amazing watching her move throughout the world. I love observing how she navigates the world. And, the other day she's like, Mom, we were, traveling. It was a park. Mom, can I go run? And I'm like, yeah. Like, go move. Yeah, that's cool. That's like this innate piece. And so people have these connotations with exercise of sweat inducing, of go big or go home, of burpees, of, all of this stuff. And then when I ask them too, like, how do you view movement? They're like, getting up out of my chair, stretching my arms, twirling around, it feels like there's a lot less barriers to entry for movement than there is exercise. If I'm going to exercise, I got to change my clothes. You have to change your clothes for movement. So I get inquisitive with people because the definitions aren't the same for everyone. And for most people, that's kind of how they associate it. So movement for more is movement for mental health, movement for creating boundaries. So that's the piece when you speak about boundaries and you speak about fitness quotes. So if what's that good one? Life is outside of your comfort zone. If you're not pushing yourself or you're not, and if you watch a YouTube video or any kind of motivational video around that quote, it's always seeing sweaty people in a gym. You're like, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone means adding 100 pounds to the bench and waking up at 4 every single day. Well, does pushing yourself, I'll give a very personal example. Does pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, which exercise can teach or movement can teach, help you show up for a Al-Anon, Nar-Anon support group that that you've been needing to go to for a long time that can help with your mental health? Yes. So that's where I really am like, let's talk about the hard stuff about exercise, but let's carry it over to all these other aspects of our life. Is it hard to, go back to your spouse and take care of them for this, third year in a row? Yes, that's hard. Can we honor that person's hard too? and the person adding 100 pounds to their bench. It's just, there's so many types of challenges that we face as humans. And sometimes calling our friends to apologize is really hard. Mm-hmm. That's hard too. So that's where I encompass that movement for more. But maybe showing up at the gym for the 5th day in a row reminds you, like, I can do hard things. Oh my gosh, I can call to apologize to my friend and I'm really embarrassed and I don't know how to apologize. And I'd rather just not call them for 10 years and that feels more or can I do hard things? Yes, I can. I can call and be vulnerable. So that's where that movement for more, movement for mental health, for setting boundaries, for life lessons comes into play.
Well, that's so important. No, I love it. And as you were listing comfort zone things, I was thinking about the ways caregivers have to get outside of their comfort zone. And one of the biggest things that that helped me improve my mental health, that saved me from the burnout I was experiencing at the time, was, setting boundaries. But that boundary I had to set outside of my comfort zone, because the lack of boundaries meant that there was no space between me and my loved one. It was, yes. I was totally swallowed in. And to be able to start having the conversation with, this is what I can do for you. This is what I cannot do. We need to find other sources for this type of support for you. And that was after decades of care, right? And the last 10 years, especially, not having those clear boundaries, to suddenly say, okay, we've got to start setting these. That's really difficult. And I think, a lot of caregivers have that, where they're like, they come to the realization they need a boundary, or they need to have that hard conversation. Sometimes it's like, I think it's time for us to, move into assisted living or something, something like that.
Yes.
And it's, those types of things come, and knowing that we have created an environment where we know we can do hard things. We've done this hard thing. We've done that hard thing. Now we've got to do this other thing. We can bring those experiences into that caregiving. So, as you were talking about, I was just thinking, like, all those conversations, those phone calls, those.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't take a class on how to take care of an elderly parent or a dying parent or, whatever. So it's there's a lot that you have to navigate. You feel like on your own, and that is hard. That is hard. So just acknowledging that piece, which can bring me into another point, if you don't mind me going into another part of this.
Go ahead.
Is that's the other kind of, I would say, myth or thing that I dispel with people, is it doesn't always have to be hard. Exercise, movement, all of that stuff doesn't have to be hard. Actually, what I work on most with my clients and with people on the channel is embracing the easy, because that part, especially with exercise, helps us show up more regularly. When we allow it to be easy, it's because we assume it always has to be hard. Again, that doesn't help with all of these quotes and, people yelling at us and all of this stuff. So I have one little rhyme that I really like to use. I say, have the gall to make it small. So maybe that means you think you should work out for 30 minutes. Have the gall to make it small. Maybe do 5 minutes. Maybe do 1 minute. Maybe do 3 minutes. How does that feel? How does that feel in your body? Or you feel like you should go for a run and you're feeling really guilty about it. Have the gall to make it small. Maybe go for a walk. Maybe go for a run walk, or it can be 5 minutes of alternating, because the other benefit, especially to caregivers, is that we let these emotions build up inside of our body. And if we're able to recognize them, maybe they're anger, maybe it's sadness, maybe it's all of these things. I mean, within the past month, I can tell you, I could feel when anger was building inside of me. And I couldn't access exercise at the time, but I know that exercise and doing that's one of the things in my toolbox to release the anger. So that is helpful to know that, right? That has nothing to do with how I look. That has nothing to do with, buying a certain thing. It just means, screaming into a pillow, right? It's releasing this emotion through your body. It's allowing the anger to move through you without it getting stuck in your body. I can feel it get stuck when I'm not able to allow it to move through me. So that's the other thing that exercise really helps you. Feeling nervous before a podcast. Usually I do movements before a podcast. It's this way to access, okay, I am feeling this. Moving. I can feel myself get tense if I sit here before. So thinking about movement in that way, that it helps emotion move through you. So that is a very wonderful tool. Exercise is a wonderful tool to have that.
Yes. And a lot of people, I can relate to that. And I know that that's something that we don't often think of. And I tend to go I love to move if I'm anxious, but if I'm too anxious, I love to curl up into a ball. So I do.
Exactly.
Both are in my toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Both are in my toolkit. They're equally helpful. So I don't, I don't choose one over the other, all the time. I pick what makes sense at the time.
Yes.
But you did mention a couple of times, doing something for 3 minutes, 1 minute, even if you can't do your 30-minute plan. That brings me to the last thing I want to talk about, which is one of my favorite things that you have on your Instagram channel, which is you share 5-minute movement ideas. And, I always say, we all have 5 minutes. We all have 5 minutes to take care of ourselves. Sometimes that's meditate. Sometimes that's move, whatever. But I want you to talk a little bit more about how you, what good is tell us about the point of 5-minute joyful movement. What are some ideas? And then share anything else you want to about that.
Well, 5-minute movements. I love the 5. Yeah, I have on the Movement for More channel, I have over 50 videos, just a 5-minute movement. And there's all sorts. There's even a couple of angry ones on there, like I was talking about. Hey, if you're feeling angry, here's some explosive movements that you can do for 5 minutes. If you're feeling fun, here's some joyful movements. So those incorporate a little bit of dance. Here's some on the ground kind of stretchy stuff. Here's some get your heart rate. Mm-hmm. So there's all sorts, but it's not 5 minutes for weight loss. It's not 8-minute abs. It's not any of that stuff. It's trying to associate that 5 minutes can shift your mood. So I think the research, and I should have the article written down, but 5 to 15 minutes has the capability to improve your mental health. So if we think about that piece, then accessing that can improve your energy over time, can improve your mood, boost your focus. So that's why I love having that accessible, because if people get on the channel and they say, I have 2 minutes, I'm going to turn on a 5-minute movement and do 2 minutes, that's awesome. They have a place that they can go, that they don't even need to think about what moves can I do for 2 minutes, right? Because sometimes that can get in our head of, it's not even worth it. 2 minutes isn't even worth it, but really shifting our position. I mean, if I'm in my chair for a long time, sometimes I'll go lay on my belly for a little bit to shift position. So that could be really beneficial for our body. And I never want to make it about, you got 5 minutes, you got that, again, that whole kind of guilt. If people are feeling guilty, I want it to be like, hey, I have 5 minutes. Oh yeah, I have this resource that I can access. And I have free stuff on YouTube for 5 minutes too. But before I was looking into putting it on the channel, there are 5-minute weight loss videos. So I was like, nope, that's all right. That sector is, I should have known already, like gotten taken care of. Well, so it's really about mental health.
Yeah. Well, again, that is one of the things that kept me on your channel after I followed it for the awesome name, was just how you share your life movements with us. And then you also encourage us to move through our lives joyfully and intentionally and whimsically, which I love. A little whimsy in some of your things as well. So I know that's a great encouragement. And I know everything that you've shared today has just reminded us of the idea of self-care, fitness, movement being something that we're meant for and can be joyful. Doesn't have to be guilty. It can be good. So I thank you so much for your time, Jamie.
Yes.
And I look forward to hanging out with you on Zoom or Riverside or wherever, since we are across one ocean at least. There may be some little, I don't know. I think it's just one. There's some little oceans over there that are little seas. Yeah. lots of things, but we're far away. So I do appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today. And I appreciate you. And for those of you listening, I'm going to share all of Jamie's information, what she talked about. I'm going to share that in the show notes. And you can also check the show notes if you want more support with your self-care, whether it be fitness, nutrition, movement, mental health. Boundaries is something that we talk a lot about in the self-caregiver community. I will have that link there as well. Thank you so much, Jamie.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining me today. From Guilt to Good podcast is a proud member of the Whole Care Podcast Network. To access additional self-care resources that help you feel good, not guilty, check out the show notes or head to theselfcaregiver.com. Subscribe now and join me in going from guilt to good as you rediscover your worth, reclaim your health, and get back the life you've been too busy to enjoy. And if you've enjoyed this show, please take a moment to leave us a review. Your feedback matters. We're redefining self-care for caregivers one episode at a time. Until next time, remember you are worthy of the same care you give others.
This is the Whole Care Network. Helping you tell your story one podcast at a time.